What's up, Anish? How's it going?
Hey, Rohan. Thanks for having me, man.
I remember telling you this a long time back. I said, Anish, I'm doing this, I'm doing this podcast and I would love to have you as a guest. And look, you're finally here. I'm extremely happy to have you on the podcast. The first time I met you as a fan. And cut to a couple of years later, now you're one of our biggest mentors and one of our biggest friends from the industry. I think the first time we met was at High Spirits.
That's right.
And I was like, wow, because that was like a pure house set.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, we did a beach sunset thing at Kodu's, yeah.
It was awesome. Up until then, I never really approached a DJ saying because obviously. So I was like, dude, you're like really what are you doing, man? And then the next time you came around, we had like a bunch of guys from Pune, always just watching you and just observing. No one's dancing, no one's enjoying, no one's grooving. We're just actually, okay, what is this? What is that? What is it?
Yeah. That was a little intimidating. I'll never forget it. But first off, let me just say congratulations on the podcast. I think it's great. I think it's so good that people in India are taking these sort of initiatives. I've been trying to push you to do stuff for a number of years, and I'm finally glad you've taken taken my advice rather. And yeah, thanks for having me on. That's the first one. Secondly, yeah, going back to that gig, that was fun. So to you guys who don't know this, right? The first time I met Rohan, I was playing for what, 400 or 500 people, maybe a bit more.
Yeah.
That day was a big gig, and there was this guy, dreadlock, standing right next to me with this look of death on his face. Like he looked really angry. And I was like, what's up with this guy? And he was like 5 feet away from me and literally stared at me non-stop. Made me quite uncomfortable. And I was thinking, what on earth is going on? And there was this crew with him. Like there were these, I think it was Priyanka. Yeah. So it was his girlfriend at the time. It was his girlfriend, rather. We'll edit that out. It was his girlfriend and a couple of his mates and whatever. And everyone just kept staring at me, and to the point where it's uncomfortable.
I know.
And I was like, what on earth's going on? And then he came up and approached me and he was like, oh, I like the way you did this and I haven't seen someone do that. And I was like, oh, okay, it's a fan. I wasn't sure he was going to take me aside and go, come on, let's take this outside.
But it was awesome. It was an awesome gig. So Anish, there's very little information about you, or I tried to do as much as research as I could, and the generic stuff was there. But if you could just tell us what your journey was, how did you start off?
That is very intentional. So that is, to be fair, I'll be honest with you.
Okay.
I'm a very private person when it comes to personal stuff.
Okay.
And personal stuff will include like even things about my dog I don't want people to know about. It's weird because I'm very much in the limelight,
Of course, yeah.
Right in everyone's face. So the persona that you get is very controlled. Like I will put out very few things. Like I'm a foodie, I'm not going to hide that. That's out. So bits of my personality are out.
But then don't you think that would be like an issue? Because, so like you said, you're in the industry.
No, don't get me wrong. It's not an issue at all. It's just a proactive choice because I'm a Cancerian by nature.
Okay.
I'm a crab. So I do like going back into my shell.
Okay.
And just doing my things. Let me give you an example. You go through my socials, you won't know who my best friends are. That's deliberate.
Okay.
I keep my world very closed and I keep my circle really small.
Okay.
And I think it's a really good thing to follow. It's someone gave me some really good advice about it and something I've always done. I've had my best mate I've had for 19 years now. We've been best friends.
Okay. Well, what's his name, by the way? Can you just let us know
his name's Ashley.
Ashley, where's Ashley from?
Ashley's from Goa. Probably one of the best musicians in the scene. He's played with some few unknowns like George Harrison from the Beatles.
Oh wow.
Yeah, he's an absolute legend. So it's deliberate. Like I try and keep that world as sort of small as possible, and away from the limelight. And then when you're sort of thrown and thrust upon stage and whatever, you definitely get a side of Aneesh Gera. But I try and.
All right. So where did this journey start? How did you start? How did you get into music? I'm saying your first clubbing experience. The first time
clubbing experience. God, it must have been 11.
11.
Yeah, I went out clubbing with my mum. And
does that really happen?
Well,
you're in Goa, so
my mum's awesome, dude.
Yeah.
I don't think it had anything to do with Goa. Well, maybe it did to a certain extent, but I mean, my mum's awesome. So
Okay.
my mum's the reason I have the whole music inclination is my mum.
Okay.
Right? Growing up, we always had radio on in the house. Till date,
All right.
music's on in the house. Whether we're in the house or not.
It's just
radio's, Yeah, radio's on. The house cannot be quiet.
So what songs did you hear when you were growing up?
Everything from the 70s, 80s, growing up. A lot of disco, a lot of funk. My mum loves her slow jams, so a lot of stuff like that. My mum used to live in Canada for a while in the UK. So back in the day, we didn't have English radio stations in India. I mean, we barely have any now.
Yeah.
So my mum used to take cassettes over and record radio. So she used to record Radio 1, Kiss FM from Vancouver.
Oh my God.
And yeah, so that's how my music knowledge is just going back all the way there. So it's just all those sort of influences. And of course, my mum loved the proper
The Elvis.
rite of passages. Yeah, the Elvises and all that was before my mum's time.
Okay.
But the Floyds, the Zeppelins, the proper 80s stuff, Pet Shop Boys. My mom loved the Pet Shop Boys. And for me, that was my first sort of nod into the electronic scene. And I remember then listening to Elvis's Always on My Mind. And then 1983.
Always on My Mind is like my go-to song. I love that.
Yeah, but which version? You're talking about the Elvis version, right?
Yes.
Yeah, for me, okay, cool. That's classic Elvis is really good. But then the Pet Shop Boys did a rework in 83, I think. It was before I was born in 83. And my mom used to have this on repeat. Full-on synth pop record. Unbelievable. 130 BPM, maybe 128, somewhere around there. Really fast, like clubbing record.
We'll definitely go check it out, yeah.
And it's a complete flip on the track. And I was like, wow. So those were the sort of music that my mom had exposed me to growing up.
Okay, so like 11 when you went for the first, was it in Goa? Where was it?
Yeah, it was in Goa. It was a nightclub called Lido's.
Lido's.
Yeah.
Okay.
You wouldn't have heard of it. So, yeah, my mom took me in, and then it was just great because it was all these people out, having a good time, listening to music, and it was about 200 people.
Okay.
And I was like, where's the music coming from? And then I saw, and this was like the early 90s, right? So the DJ, much like today, is the last thought of. So there was some like abandoned closet that they were like, hey, we'll put him in here kind of thing. And then I found this DJ and I was like, hang on a minute. This one guy is playing records that 200 people are dancing to. I was like, whoa. That's power. That's cool. So I found that a really cool experience that one person could then entertain or give you this collective experience.
You remember who the DJ was by any chance?
Yeah, of course. It was a guy called Troy.
Troy.
Yeah, we're still friends.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So then after that, that was the first experience. So then when did you think that, let me just make this a career? Was it DJing? Was it?
Well, at the time, I was a big water baby, still am, but my whole life was going down that road.
All right.
I got my PADI license when I was 12. I was one of the youngest scuba divers, certified scuba divers in the country.
But how did that come along? How did that come to you?
I was a water baby, mate. I mean, I've been surfing since I was 3, swimming since I was 6 months old.
All right.
6 months old, my mum and dad took me into the pool. Surfing, like I said, 3, 4 years old. The works, I would do swim meets, the works. And then scuba started, and that was my life. I wanted to be marine biology.
Wow.
You know about the sleeve.
Yeah, of course.
So the sleeve is all water-based, and marine biology is what I wanted to pursue.
Okay.
And unfortunately, by the time I was 14, I had a bit of a back problem, and my back just basically packed up on me.
Okay.
Haven't dived since.
So then how the transition?
So the only 3 things I was into was I was heavily into sport. I used to play basketball for the state, swim for the state, all that kind of stuff. And then all physical activity had to stop.
Okay.
And the only other thing that I really liked was music. So then my mum just shoved me down that rabbit hole going, because that's the one thing he likes. Let's sort of push him down that path. And anyway, and I was just messing around with my mum's tape deck, like trying to make my own mixtapes and that kind of stuff and whatever, not realizing that what I was doing at that time was mixing.
Okay.
And it wasn't the kind of mixing, it was just cut mixing.
Yeah.
I would record off the radio and realize I could stop recording a song midway through and start recording another song midway through, and they would join perfectly if I timed it right. And that was a bar. I didn't know what a bar was that time, but it's just when you listen to music, you realize there's a mathematical progression.
Yeah, of course.
So, that just sort of installed.
So that just happened like very, like normally?
Very cash, very cash. I wasn't even showing it to people. I wasn't even showing it to my mate going, look, I made this. It was just like, it's something that I would make and then play in the car, like on my way to school or my way to college or whatever.
Wow.
And then that kind of just...
Eventually went into...
Yeah, snowballed.
You picked up like a class, a DJ class, or was it just like watching people? How did you...
Mate.
Okay.
There was no concept of a DJ class. There was no concept of a DJ school or an academy. There was barely a concept of a DJ in India, right? So back when I decided I want to go down this career path, if you wanted to be a DJ, you had to be a high school dropout with no academics, an IQ of 5, right? And basically a bum. That's what the perception of a DJ was. That's a fact.
Yeah?
Yeah, of course, man. I'll be honest with you. I think in social strata, a bartender was considered a better profession than being a DJ.
And
Not that I'm knocking bartenders. I think it's a very hard job and a very skilled job. But
All right.
that's how it was.
All right. So since then, so you started DJing. Eventually, you picked up, like, it was your own thing where you started DJing. What was
No,
your
not
first
really.
thing?
I had a couple of mates who were into it at the time, some really good friends.
Okay.
We're still DJing today, actually, and we've been friends ever since.
All right.
So then I had 2-3 people who kind of showed me the basics on these things called players, which looked like they could fly an aircraft at the time. And, it was basic what a cue is, what a play button was, what something called pitch control was. So DJing is really simple. I mean, I have one thing I will give a nod to my dad with is I'm pretty decent with mathematics.
Okay.
And I get that off my dad. And you need a lot of math in DJing if you want to do it properly.
Okay.
So it's just basically counting in bars and understanding basic math. And the concept of DJing DJing is you play one record on top of another perfectly so that everything masks itself, i.e. the kick drum will play over a kick drum, the snare will play over a snare. So to the listener, you're hearing one thing as opposed to hearing two things because they're playing perfectly on top. And you basically control the speed of a record. That's pitch control or tempo control. So once I got my head around that, which is you had to speed up a record or you slow down a record.
So where were you practicing? You had friends who had the player?
No, I was about to tell you that. I was like I said, I was always able to mess about with music, and I always ran before I could walk. I bought my first CDs before I had a CD player. I bought my first records before I had a turntable. Because I knew what I wanted. It didn't matter if it came in the other way.
Okay.
And then there was this huge nightclub that opened right about 2 kilometers away from where I lived. Huge. It was one of the biggest nightclubs in Goa called Club Extreme.
Okay.
And at that point, I was DJing, but you know what I was doing? I was doing like college events and pop-ups and school fetes.
What
and
music
that
were you
kind of
playing back
stuff.
then?
Horrible music, mate. Like proper cheese, like school discos, that kind of music. Everything from hip-hop and whatever.
Yeah.
And then what happened was, because I got really popular with all the colleges,
Okay.
and CD players would be rented out by sound guys, and I knew all of them. So when they didn't have a booking, I would be like, can I borrow the players and take them home? And they were like, you can have them for like a day. So
Okay.
in 24 hours, I'd use them for 18.
Oh my God.
But I'd only have like 6 CDs. So I'd keep mixing the same music again and again and again to understand how I could do it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, of course.
That's how I got my head around pitch control. And I worked at that for 5 days, and I got it in 5 days.
So that's how you learn self-taught in 5 days.
Because I understood the theory.
Yeah.
Move this down, it goes faster. Move that
Yeah.
that way, it goes slower. Simple, right? So that's how I got my head around pitch control. And then...
So for all the listeners listening right now, it seems pretty, like very casual that you figured out yourself, because you had there was no YouTube or that this is how it works. Because now, if you just Google what do DJs do,
Yeah.
and you have everything that you're saying right now, so it's much more easier for us right now. But back then, I think figuring out the basics were very, very tight.
Yes and no.
Okay.
Now everything's handed to you on a platter, like you said. How do I do this? There's video on YouTube how to do it.
Yeah.
How do you put those sticky things on laces?
Yeah.
At the end, there'll be a YouTube video for something so random. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
There would be, right? But I think it's just like anything else. If you feel like you need to do something, you ask. So I'm a firm believer in if you don't ask, you don't get. Right?
Exactly. You remember me asking you, what is that noise? You did this scratching thing. I was like, how do you scratch? And for me, listening to house music, I never really saw someone scratching. And I was like, how do you do that scratching thing? So he's like, dude, that's not a scratch. So you show me what you did with the noise the noise effect. And I was like, and I've been using it since then.
Yeah,
and
cool,
I just love to see people like, what is this guy doing?
Yeah,
it's a good trick that I learned from you.
So yeah, like I said, so it was just pretty straightforward. I learned the theory from 5 or 6 people because they all told me the same thing.
Okay.
And I meant, right, I just need to implement and put it into practice. There is no substitute for practice, mate. You have to just knuckle down, study, repeat. So that's what I did. I used to borrow the players at home. And then this nightclub came calling and went, I think it was on the 20th of December. And they were like, we want you for the Christmas week for like 25th to the 31st. And I was like, I'm not ready. I knew I wasn't ready, but I said, of course, I jumped at the chance.
Okay.
And I said to them, I have one condition. I said, can I come in early and practice? And they were like, yeah, no worries.
Yeah.
And in 2 days, I befriended the manager who's still mates with me today.
Okay.
Okay. And the club would open at 8. In 2 days, I convinced him to give me the keys to the nightclub so I could open it at 4. So I would,
Are you serious?
Yes, I would go to the nightclub before the security guard, roll up the shutters, put on the system just so I could practice.
Oh my God.
Because now I knew I had 500-600 people every night that I had to be at least good in terms of my mixing and my theory.
Yeah.
So literally 5 days before I learned pitch control, then I learned what the mixer did.
Yeah.
Put the 2 and 2 together. By Christmas Eve, I was acceptable. Let's put it that way. And yeah, it just snowballed from there. And I only had a contract for a week.
Okay.
And come New Year's Eve, they just offered me a residency.
So how long were you there?
A year.
Okay.
A year.
And then
18
after
months.
that, so how did it happen? So from playing in Goa locally to eventually playing Ministry of Sound, what happened?
a lot.
So what is the time duration from your starting your first residency once you quit? I think you're freelancing then after that and eventually reaching.
No, I was a resident DJ for about 5 years, 5-6 years. I did the whole
different
resident
places?
thing. Yeah.
Okay.
And a residency is something that I would highly recommend
Exactly.
any budding DJ, beg your pardon, because it teaches you the art form like nothing else would. So let me give you an example. Nightclub A has the same amount of people coming in every week, the same kind of people.
Yeah.
How do you keep them entertained week on week?
Exactly.
How do you keep it fresh? The same crowd. That's a skill. That's difficult. Say, for example, you get 100 people, out of which 75 love rock. You can't play rock every Saturday night.
Exactly. Yeah.
After 3 Saturdays, they'll be bored of it. and naturally. So you have to reinvent, yet keep them in their space,
Yeah.
yet conform to what the nightclub wants to do. So it's challenging, but
It's also learning the commercial aspect of the nightclub because actually you're on a job.
it is a job.
Yeah, so figuring out what people are, I mean, what people like. You have a lot of these guests who are like your regulars, and you have to kind of please them. Has it happened to you? Give a shout out to this guy, give a shout out to that guy.
Sure.
Yeah. So how does that feel? Now I'm pretty sure now nothing like that happens to you. Or does it?
Yeah, of course it does. Absolutely. Yeah, mate, absolutely. Look, you know me quite well, okay? And truth be told, most people who don't know me can see the huge wall in front of my face and barriers I put up. And that's there for a reason. I don't want someone to invade that sort of personal realm. But once you break through the barriers, you know what I'm like, right? So let me give you an example. So if I'm playing like a supersonic, like what we're doing, what I'm here for at the festival, and if I see so many people I know, but if I see you, you know I'd give you a shout out. You've turned up at my gigs, and I'm the only person I've ever given a shout out to is you.
Yeah, and I appreciate that, man. That's awesome.
You deserve it.
So yeah, Ministry of Sound. Tell me all about it. Yeah, Ministry of Sound is like it's I don't know. I can't even explain what a feeling that would be for me. But then tell us how it was.
That's the holy grail.
Exactly.
It is because right now in the scene, you can argue nightclub wise, it's Printworks because it's the biggest thing in London, or it's Paradiso in Berlin, which I'm not even sure is open anymore, or Cocoon, or all these legendary sort of venues. But nothing will ever come close to that word.
Exactly.
The Ministry of Sound. It is just at the pinnacle, even if it's dropped in form or whatever it may be. As a DJ, that is your holy grail. That is where you want to play. That's how you want to play. So what I'm more proud of is I'm not impressed in the one-off gigs anymore. The world's changed, mate. Anyone can get a one-off gig, right? For the fact that I've had a residency with them for 4 years now, and I play twice a year with them, that's
so. Tell us about the first time you played there. What?
Oh my
how did you land that gig though?
Oh my God. So Ministry came calling to us about a year before because I started gigging at one of their biggest competitors in England called Gatecrasher. With my mate Jimmy Kennedy. What happened off the back was these guys were competing venues in England, even though they were one was based in Birmingham, one was based in London. But we were doing the same kind of acts, like we're booking people like Deadmau5 and Calvin Harris and Eric Murillo, Sanchez, those kind of lads. And we were always on opening or closing duties. And heard the work, realized okay, these guys are cool. Invited us in. Of course, there's a lot of negotiations. There's that. You know how it is. The politics get involved, the agents get involved, and the agents get removed, and then we handle it yourselves because someone's cocked up somewhere. And then like when they approached us, we said, look, we're not interested in a one-off. I said, if that's what you're after, we're not interested in that. We're interested in something a lot more.
Okay.
And we know we had more to offer. So we came in, we did a gig, and then we got our residency where we were there for twice a year, which then grew into a record label night because I own a record label called Ultraviolet Music.
Yeah, I was getting to that with Paul Thomas. So how did that come across?
Because
you gigged with Paul first. Was it? Do you know him or how
Paul and I met at a music festival.
Okay.
And we just got on like a house on fire, and we just connected very well musically.
Okay.
And we were living in the same city at the time, which was in Birmingham.
Okay.
I think Paul just reached out for a coffee, and he's like, I need to have a chat. And I was like, yeah. And Paul Thomas is one of my heroes. So he was like, look, I'm starting this record label. And I was like, great, cool. So we had a chat about it.
Okay.
I gave him my advice on it. I sent him a demo, and he was like, yeah, it's great. I'll sign to the label. And then again, we had this sort of chat, and then he figured where I was mind-wise and ethos-wise when it came to business and work.
Of course.
And then 3 months after he signed my record, he invited me in to be a partner with the label. And I went, okay. And then we just started the label together. So actually, he was just like, I'm starting a label. I was like, I got a demo. Sent him the record. He was like, I'll sign it.
That was like a first approach.
Because that's what I thought he was asking for, right? Naturally, he wanted some music and he loved the track. So he signed the record. And then, the more and more we kept chatting, he was like, Paul's very good with the back end. And that's what he still does. He's amazing at, the programming, scheduling, promos, who should get the record, etc.
How do you guys bifurcate your work? Is just both of you right now?
Exactly. Yeah, we've always been both of us. We've just had a new lad come on called Blank Page, who's one of our artists on Ultraviolet now.
Okay.
So shout out to Greg. He's been great and injected a bit of new blood into Ultraviolet, which we sorely needed. Because Paul's off doing stuff with FSOE now as well. well. So, everyone's sort of just doing their own thing, and the label's 5 years old. So it's always good to have a fresh, new perspective.
Okay.
So what Paul's really good with is the back end scheduling, the admin work, the royalties, all the financing, all that kind of stuff, because it's a nightmare, mate, trying to figure out your royalties from all these places. You got so many different avenues you need to chase, and then follow up and make sure our artists get the best that they can possibly get. That's the whole idea of the label. What I do is I do all the A&R. So I sign the music, I get the contracts done, I decide what comes out, where it comes out, how it should come out, strategy, the works. Even the art. I'm very passionate about ultraviolet art.
Yeah.
So I've been doing all the art from day one. Actually, tell a lie, I started after the first year because we had a friend of ours who did the first round of artwork for us. But I was very passionate about that. I wanted to look a certain way, feel a certain way. So as far as the theme and the music and the direction of the label, it's very much both of us. But then we have our areas of expertise, which we just do. And everything's always a chat. The good thing is we've been doing this so long, it's quite easy now. 5-10 minute chat. That'll do us for like 3 months.
Great. So tell me about your new fascination with Spotify, million plays and streams. How's that going about for you? What's the exact number? Do you have it?
I think at my last count, we had passed the 3 million mark overall.
Oh my God.
So yeah.
So that's your biggest hit so far?
Yeah, that's overall. So all of my Spotify from day one has been 3 million.
So what are the future plans in terms of production? What are you doing next? What can we expect from you in the coming years?
Coming years? Well, good question. And good timing actually, Rohan. I'm a little jaded with the scene right now, especially in India. The gig scene is just going through a very weird space, if I'm perfectly honest. Progressive house is barely thriving. Trance is almost dead. But the fans haven't. I mean, the fans are still there. The music's still there. I'm just surprised that the powers that be aren't pushing it. They need to be. It's like the scene's always been small, but now it's like 1% off a small scene. Do you know what I mean? So hopefully that picks up again. But music always runs in a cycle. So it'll come back.
Do you stick to your sound? What do you do in a case where
I've gotten into this industry because I love doing it. So that will never change. It's difficult that you do when passion becomes work. That does change the narrative a little bit. Somehow you need to figure out, how do I put food on the table? How do you sustain your family? Right? How do you grow? So to manage both of those is a little tricky. And sometimes you resort to doing things that you wish you didn't. But I think that's all right. That's like any line of work. Sometimes you don't want to do something for artistic integrity, but it's such a good payday that you go, you know what?
Get a bit tempted.
It's not a question of being tempted. Like I said, you have to put food on the table at the end of the day. And a lot of people don't realize that because the lifestyle is very lucrative. You're sitting here in a 5-star hotel, it's great. And you're playing the biggest music festival, arguably in Asia. And it just looks great. Right, okay, but what about the admin? What about the back end? What about this? What about that?
Is music your main hustle? Do you have something else at the back end? Because
music's everything.
But then, is there any other business? Is there anything else you're looking at?
So like I said, we own the record label. My actual profession is I'm an audio engineer.
Okay.
So that's opened like a lot of doors for me, and I do a lot of engineering work. So everything from mixing music and audio for radio, television, film, to doing adverts as well, mixing bands. For some reason, I sort of stumbled on this by accident in England, where I was asked to mix a metal band from Wales, and somehow I have a knack for it, mate. So I've been mixing hard rock, heavy metal, thrash, all that kind of stuff for a number of years now, and engineering for them. So yeah, that's again a good thing. I teach, which is something I've been very passionate about. I don't really shout about it, since you wanted to know a couple of things. I taught my first student how to DJ 14 years ago. I'm very proud to say that he's like the biggest lad in Goa for the last 10 years. I've taught other people who have gone on to do festivals abroad. Some of them have played Supersonic. Some of them still play Sunburn. One of them has actually done ministry with me.
Wow.
It's incredible that some of the lads that I've taught over the years, and some of the students just wanted to learn how to do it, just so that they learned the skill and just played at home. And that's really cool as well. I do have my own audio engineering and music production course as well, which I'm quite passionate about. So I've taught a lot of music producers and artists.
So how long is the course? Do you have like a proper full-time course? Because you're probably traveling across the country. So how does it work?
It works a little flexible. So I usually do a 3-month, but give or take a couple of weeks here and there based on my travel and, in case anyone else has any commitments.
All right.
So it's fairly fluid as far as that's concerned, but I work between a 3 to 4 month course. And that's music production with audio engineering. And I've been doing that for about 5 years now.
Wow. What's it
Yeah.
called? What's the? There's
I don't have
no
an academy, nothing. You
Okay.
just come to the studio. I will always interview you before.
interview you.
Yeah, absolutely. I always want to make sure I take on the right people for the right reasons.
What do you mean by the right people? Is it because you're looking for someone who's specifically doing this for the fame, or just how do
Yeah,
you?
something like that. Like, I'm an old school guy. I've only been doing this 18 years, but I still think my mindset is of the old school, like the heroes that I grew up listening to. You know,
Okay.
like the guys from the 90s, the Tanaglias, the Roger Sanchez's, that kind of thing. So the true art of DJing, not the EDM culture.
What is the EDM culture?
It's just sort of manufactured fame, manufactured music, manufactured. There's no soul in it. Generally speaking, I don't want to generalize. I hate generalizing, but to generalize, it does seem to have the overall perception is that there's very little soul in it. You know what I mean? So have a chat with Kenny Dope. I mean, if you ever get the opportunity, or have a chat with Lil Louis Vega, the Masters at Work.
Of course, yeah.
These guys have been winning Grammys and doing remixes for Madonna since the mid '90s, right? And they're still doing it today. But they're not. They haven't hopped on the bandwagon to do EDM. They could probably turn out an EDM record, a hit a day if they wanted to. But for them, hey man, this is the sound that we do. This is what we're passionate about. What we do, and we'll do it. So they're no longer headlining your ultras or your creams
Yeah.
or your global gatherings or your Tomorrowlands. But they're still championing that house sound. Yeah, the New York lads.
Yeah. So talking about your supersonic days you mentioned earlier, if you could just let us know last year what is up with your bathrobes, and I found out that you wanted a goat in your green room. How did that come across? I'm pretty sure we all want to know.
It takes a lot to make me laugh, but that was good. Okay, so I probably shouldn't be saying this, but you're absolutely right. There was so as artists, you get we have to provide a hospitality rider and a tech rider as to what our requirements are.
Okay.
Whenever we perform. So what drinks would you like? What kind of food would you like? Do you have any allergies, etc.? What are your requirements? And the technical side of it as well, right?
Okay.
So the goat's absolutely true. That wasn't Rohit Barker's rider. You need to ask Barker about that, because he's had this fascination with sheep for the longest time. I can't get my head around it. I mean, I try not to judge, but every time I see him, he's on his phone watching Shaun the Sheep. And I've been to his house, and it's just decorated in all sorts of sheep merchandise and anything sheep. So go figure. So that's why there was a requirement for a goat in the green room. And I take my hat off to the Supersonic lads.
Don't tell me you actually got. They actually got.
I think Nikhil pulled all the strings he possibly could, but I think getting a goat to main stage was pushing it a bit. You never know. This year's always there.
Yeah.
So So got you covered, mate.
So I think you guys had like a nice gang. You is
So,
MC Stretch and Barco with the bathrobes.
Well, there's a reason why, I'm sure you know this, there's a reason why I'm very passionate about Supersonic. It's my 7th year. I've been there right from day one. Nikhil's a dear friend. And when Nikhil said that they were moving from Sunburn over, I was living in England at the time, and he was like, this is what's happening. And I was like, yeah, I'm there. Irrespective of anything, I'm there.
Okay.
That's what I mean by supporting a scene. He's a mate. He's done so much for the scene here, and he supported me no end. So of course you'll always have his back.
Of course.
And we will continue to have his back. So when they started off, Supersonic started off, literally, they put the whole festival together in 20 days. And it was just, it was amazing. And it was literally this amazing group of people who was Casey, who was our visual guy and designed Main Stage, which I fell in love with. It was called Ironheart.
That's how you had a song.
I loved it so much. I named and wrote a song after
Yeah.
it called Ironheart by Price Oliver. Head of photography and videography was a dear friend of mine called Ashish Palmer.
Okay.
There was some random host called MC Stretch who nobody had ever heard of and no one's heard of since. Tell a lie, that's Martin, host of Tomorrowland for I think the last 18 years, something like that.
Yeah, more than that actually. Yeah.
The Rohit Barker. My stage manager from New York was a guy called Jas. To add to that crew was obviously Nikhil, Tuhin Mehta, and I'm sure I'm forgetting a couple of people. I can't remember who else. And just a few others. So it was this amazing group of 8-10 of us who just stayed together. And every Supersonic was about this family coming together. Supersonic has its own different families. The techno lads have their own family. The live guys have their own family. And, and the EDM guys have their own family, whatever. But I fit into this. and this was my family, and we just became really close. I mean, I think after the GOAT, Rohit Barker has just been, I've been trying to get rid of him ever since, and he just doesn't fucking take the hint, mate. God. But yeah, so that's what Supersonic was for us, how it started, and the journey kept evolving. And it was the same crew. Every year on year, it's the same crew. It's the 7th year. It's still Martin. It's still me.
Yeah.
Right? Rohit's in Bangalore this year doing Awakening. So
Yeah.
unfortunately, it's weird not having him at the festival. Jazz is in the States.
So who's your go-to guy? Because whenever we are doing something, my first point of contact is sending it to you, getting a feedback from you. And there are many tracks that we worked on which have not actually come out because it's not been approved by you. So
Great, no pressure.
Who's the guy who slaps it on your face saying this is shit, don't let this go out?
Oh, I've got a few.
Okay.
And that is incredibly important. You must have that. You must have people who will give you honest feedback. So I'm very blessed to have a few people who I really look up to.
One thing I really appreciate about you is the first time we send you a track, you gave me like what 200 word feedback, and usually we send our tracks to everyone and anyone. Okay.
Yep.
And good work, not for me, but keep sending them out. That stuff. And I got like a 200 word thing. I was like, okay, wow.
Yeah.
You could actually make out by the way the entire mail was structured. Is like you heard the intro, you heard the breakdown, you heard the drop, you heard everything. So it's really fascinating. And it's really important that you mentioned that you need someone like that who can actually tell you this is really good. This can be better. Sometimes, in fact, you get a lot of people saying this is not great.
Yeah.
But you have very few people tell you that this is good but can be great. So that's something which is. So who do you go to?
I don't have too many people who give me that kind of feedback, if I'm perfectly honest, but I do have a small network. So irrespective of whether I'm working with them on the record or not, Paul Thomas, right? This guy's got my back no matter what. And it's the feedback that I value more than anything else. So Paul will tell me straight up. A friend of mine from Black Hole Recordings called Chris O'Neill.
Okay. Oh, of course.
Who's the head of Avanti. So even if I'm not sending a record to him to sign, I will still send him a record going, what do you think?
Okay.
Do you know what I mean? And I want feedback. And he'll go, and exactly that kind of feedback. So because we're all producers, he's not going to sit and psychoanalyze everything for me because everything's more or less okay. But if I'm having an issue, say, for example, kick to bass ratio, he'll go, mate, go check this, go check that, quite a few of my friends, mate. I'm really blessed. Anish Sood.
Okay.
We always bounce music off each other. In fact, I've just finished a record and Sood's going to do a quick master for me on it. Yeah, so we're always helping each other, and that's how you build a community. Elod. Have you ever heard of a guy called Elod? He goes by Shane54.
Oh.
He's one of the biggest trance names going.
Of course.
Loveliest guy you will find. And Elod, actually, Shane54, I mean, I obviously knew he was, huge fan, wrote to me because he loved my record Jinx, which I put out 2 years ago on the same label as Avicii and EDX. And that record failed quickly. It went nowhere so fast. And I actually considered it a huge failure. Until someone like Elod was like, mate, I've played this on my radio show 4 weeks in a row. And I was like, what? And that's how we became mates, So even if you put a track out and it doesn't hit the top 100 and doesn't do well on Spotify and no one listens to it and it's got like 2 views on YouTube, it's okay. It's okay to fail. Not every single thing you do is going to be amazing. Not every single gig you're going to do is going to be amazing. Not every single record you do is going to be amazing. It's okay. It's a learning experience. Put out your art. Right. Never compromise your art. If you're happy with it, put it out. Don't put anything out that you're unhappy with. Rule. And if you believe in it, do it. Doesn't matter. I still say one of the best records I've ever written was my biggest flop.
What was that?
House is More Than Just a Feeling.
Wartone Records, right?
Wartone.
Yeah,
That's right, yep.
Yeah.
Signed to Sunny Wartone. I think that's published by Fatboy Slim as well.
Yeah.
And I still think it's one of the best records I've ever done.
So since you've been traveling all across the world, give us like a nice funny anecdote of some people. I think you've opened for Swedish House Mafia on their last tour.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure you played with big names. Tell us something interesting. Tell us something which we don't know. Something funny.
All right. Where was this? This was Milton Keynes, England, hanging backstage with the Swedes. And we're just having a big laugh before the gig. Someone was DJing and then I was on next and then it was the Swedes. It was me and Jimmy Kennedy. We knew Axe really well from when Axwell first came to India.
Yeah, of course.
And then Jimmy has his own relationship with Axwell, so we all know him really well. Never met Steve before, never met Seb before. But Axe was cool.
Yeah.
He's like down to earth. He's all right, So we're just having a chat, and he was having a proper moan about opening DJs. So we're just having a look at each other going, right? Okay. And I said, like, why have you got your sort of panties in a twist? And he was like, he played it. This was quite a few years ago. So we're back about 10 years ago, 8 years ago, somewhere around there. And he played a gig somewhere, I think it was in Ibiza. And the opening DJ played his last song. He played Feel the Vibe, which was Axel's first ever record.
Yeah.
And Axe lost it. He was drinking a beer and threw the whole beer in his face.
Are you serious?
Yep. So I think that's in an interview somewhere as well. That was
Let's-
the naughtiest thing that he had done.
Any
I was-
experience that you have with the opening DJ?
Oh
killing your wife?
yeah,
I remember
India's
once-
amazing for opening DJs. I mean, I just had a phone call actually of somebody who's going to open for me today because I'm doing an after today.
Okay.
Going, what should I play and etc. etc. And the first thing I said to him is, I appreciate your professionalism.
Thanks for calling. Yeah, of course.
Thanks for calling. You know, I really appreciated that. It's the right thing to do. I remember doing a tour and I played Calcutta. And you know me, I like my deep house. I like
Yeah, yeah.
opening. I like grooves. I like building. And they said, "What are you going to do?" I said, "Listen, I will start at 120, 122, and then I'll work up depending on the crowd because you never
Okay.
plan the set.
Yeah.
Let's see what the people are like, what they're going to take, and then we'll decide which direction to go once I read it. But I would like to start with a bit of a warm up myself."
Yeah.
They said, "Fine, no problem." The last song that he left me with was David Guetta's Titanium.
So what do you do? How do you deal with?
Oh,
the
I
protest?
thanked him profusely on the microphone for an outstanding opening set. And then I highly recommended to everybody that I should open for him next time.
Are
And
you
that he should be the headline. Mate, if you're going to end up with David Guetta at an opening set, you don't understand the concept of opening. Opening is an art.
I know, I agree. And it was very scary to open for you as well. We played for you last time. There's so many attempts, failed attempts. We finally got to play together.
Yeah,
and
it
it
was
was an
good.
awesome gig that we had in Pune. Yeah. So, yeah. So, I mean, apart from, I think, not many people know this, apart from DJing and apart from doing your production and everything else, you're also like a really, really great guy.
am I?
You also actively work. I've seen you cleaning up beaches. I've seen you doing a lot of charity work. Tell us about what you're doing and why are you doing it? I mean, it's completely bipolar to how we portray ourselves as DJs. We're partying and drinking and having fun. But this is like, I think, a very different approach. Why do you do this and how and what all are you doing right now?
Good question. See, these are the things I don't like talking about. I just rather do it. Yeah, it's a bit of a hard one, actually. So I'm on the board of directors for a little local NGO in Goa called
Okay.
Stars.
Okay.
Which is started by a very good friend of mine called Lucian Fernandez. And she's done such an outstanding job. So I help out wherever I can. In fact, I haven't had any time over the last 2.5 months, but they know what my schedules are like. So I'll be hands-on for 6 months and I'll be able for like 3. But we work on a volunteer basis.
Okay.
And we started off really small. We were supporting 1 home. And now we do 6.
Okay.
So it doesn't sound like much, but it's a hell of a lot.
It is, of course, a
So
lot,
we
yeah.
do homes for the aged. We've just taken on the Home for the Blind, the National Institute of the Blind.
Okay.
So we help out wherever we can. Underprivileged kids, destitute women, orphans, kids who have come from sort of troubled backgrounds, special kids, the physically different, the differently abled, the works. So we're doing that. I have picked up 2 projects myself that I really wanted to launch off the NGO.
Okay.
One was a medical welfare program and one was a sports scholarship program. So do I tell you about this? Should I?
You should, of course.
Okay, so we have this girl called Savitha, who's she's a special kid. She's 17.
Okay.
Is with one of our homes. Brilliant kid.
Okay.
Very good table tennis player. One thing led to another. We saw some talent. The sisters at the school told us. So we looked at each other and said, okay, what can we do? And not to knock the government, but the government does do a lot of stuff for them. But I think there was some equipment requirement. They wanted rackets, this, that, whatever, worth about 10 grand, which the government will naturally not be able to allocate that amount of money because they have their budgets and naturally they're helping masses. So we said, yeah, okay, let's do that. And then we sort of went and checked her out and realized she was really good. And we said, what can we do? So we picked up a coach, got her coaching classes 3 days a week, upped it to 5 days a week, got her into a fitness program. So we started building her up as an athlete.
Okay.
One thing led to another. She qualified for the Asian Games.
Oh, wow.
Qualified for the Special Olympics. Won gold last year at the Asian Olympics. At the Paralympics.
Okay.
I get confused between there are 2 games. No, it wasn't the Paralympics. It was the World Games.
Okay.
There's the World Games, which is the Olympic sport, and then there's the Paralympics, which she's going for now. Yeah, and she won gold and came back. And this is a girl, who comes from very humble background.
All right.
I think her mother I think she comes from her mom's a single mom who works as a maid. So it's a tough life. And what I really appreciated about the government was she won about $10,000 prize money,
Okay.
which the Goa government matches for you,
Oh.
which I thought was outstanding. So with a little bit of effort and support from us and of course all her hard work, she's able to do this for herself and build a career for herself. And I don't want to stop at that. Like, I want to see if we can get the next crop in and give them a platform. And even when they're done with the games, where can we go from there on? Because what I want to do is sustainability. I don't want to do, with most charities, you're looking at, we'll do something for them today.
Yeah.
Great, it's great, and it's done. And then you have your feel good factor, and it's done, and they're cool. What happens after that? So, say for example, with someone like Savitha, what happens 5 years down the line? She's had her moment of fame. She's done really well. Money is money. I'm sure she'll, do
Of
whatever
course,
she
yeah.
wants with it. And then, how do we sustain her? So maybe could we turn her into a coach? That's what I'm exploring right now.
Okay.
Is it something she wants to do? What would she like to do? Do you know what I mean? Could she enter more games? Could she do more? Could she make a career out of this? Could she sustain herself for the next 10 years? So these are the conversations at least I'm trying to have with people to see what we can do and wherever I can use my popularity.
Okay.
So, because I think if you can use your power in a slightly better way, why not, right? So instead of you sponsoring me for an event, how about I play your event for free and why don't you sponsor the school?
Are you looking forward to do that very often? Because I think that's a great approach and that's the easiest approach.
Well, it's been going for about a couple of years now. So it's not something I shout and scream about. I should. I don't. But anyway, it is what it is. Because it's a fine line. I don't want to talk about it, but at the same time, people tell me I have to talk about it.
Of course.
So yeah. So anyway, so that's just one example with Savitha as to what we did with the charity. We do a family welfare program if we identify families who are unable to make ends meet, come from hard backgrounds. So we even do like a simple ration for them where it's like a small amount of money and you can just pick up whatever you want from the supermarket. So earlier we used to do this thing, Rohan, where they would send us a requirement per month and, or whatever per week.
And you could just,
rice, dal, essentials, toothpaste,
soap.
Soap,
Yeah.
toothbrushes, school books, pencils, coloring books, sanitary ware, blah, 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 that kind of stuff. And this is what we would do. So we would just go buy and give it to them. They're very grateful. And then I decided, let's flip it. Let them go and choose, and we'll just pay the bill. You're capped at so much.
Okay.
So it helps
Makes more,
our
yeah.
resources. That was my vision. It helps our resources because we work on volunteer basis.
Of course.
But the feedback that we had was unbelievable. And this lady who has two boys, I think probably one's around 7, one's around 10 years old, was so shocked and she was so pleased and so touched with the fact that for the first time, she was able to walk into a supermarket that you and I would walk into and be able to choose her own soap and her own toothpaste.
Wow.
And I couldn't get my head around that. You can't relate. I can't relate. Can
course.
you imagine not being able to choose your own toothpaste, mate?
Of course.
And you having a son who wants, Mom, I want the black color toothpaste because the black color one looks cool. That was
Yeah.
me as a 5-year-old.
Of course.
Right. But she could never do that for her boy because obviously they were trying to make ends meet. Here we have a limit for them. Spend within this limit, buy whatever you want. That's what we're saying, right? Within your requirement
Of course.
basis, of
Yes,
course.
of course.
And, we have a deal with the supermarket. So we gave that person the power of choice. And for me, that's what the charity is about. How can we enrich your life, or how can we make a difference in a way that maybe doesn't cost money, but it adds value. We're all about value. So for her to come back and say to her, sir, this year, this time I went and I got this soap. I've never tried it before. How is it? And I was like, it's nice. Try that next week. Go and try another one. Go and try another
Great.
one. She said, yes, sir, I will. And you could see how excited she was. And I couldn't get my head around it thinking, man, it's soap. What sort of life are we living?
Of course.
And there's someone like who lives 2 minutes away from you and they can't choose their own soap. So that was it's a bit upsetting in a way, but at the same time, I was so happy that we were able to do that.
All right.
So that's the ethos of the NGO.
But that's great. It's really great, the work that you guys are doing. It's really awesome.
And off the back of that, I'm also quite passionate about cancer awareness. So I do a huge gig for the King's School in South Goa.
Yeah, I've seen. It's like a huge. I don't know how many people.
Insane. Yeah, this year we did 6,500 people.
Wow.
So it's like the school fete. So I'll tell you what I do. Right. I don't play for free. Initially, the first year I did it, I said I'll play for free, just donate my fee. And then I realized I'm missing a trick here. So if I charge you 10 rupees for a gig, here's what I do now when I go to the King's School. I tell them, I'm charging 10 rupees for the gig. Please speak to sponsor 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Get them all to pay me a full fee.
Okay.
Are you with me?
Yeah.
Right? So instead of you earning 10 rupees from me, you're earning 50 rupees from me. But I don't want the money. I will donate it straight to you.
Great.
So you as a sponsor, don't even touch my bank account. Pay it straight to the charity. And you'll get a tax rebate.
Wow.
So it's a big win for the sponsor.
Of course.
Because it's an allowable expense. You get a tax rebate because they're a registered NGO.
Of course.
Right? Instead of you generating 1 fee out of me, you're generating 5. So before I've stepped on stage, the reason you have me there is because I will pull X amount of crowd and we always do it. And I bring all my mates and we all do it for free.
Yeah.
But now I'm actually paying you to do it. So before I've even stepped on stage, I've generated X amount of money.
Wow.
And I think this year was somewhere around there. So for me, that's really good. And this is a cancer charity where if you come from a harder background, you can't afford the treatment, even though quite a lot of it's free in Goa. But things are not free, is like your diagnosis, what happens after, the aftercare, etc., etc. We will cover everything. Cashless.
Great.
You have to submit your file to the school. They will do a thorough investigation into finances, into your medical background. There's a medical team, there's a financial team. If they approve you, everything's taken care of.
Wow.
Irrespective of where you are in your treatment. You could have had your treatment 2 years ago, and most of these people will beg, borrow, right? And then they're struggling, so they'll come to us and go, listen, this is the case. If they approve it, we're fine. We've got you covered. So that's something I'm very passionate about championing. My mum comes to every gig of mine. I sneak her up on stage, and there's like 6,000 people, and she runs back off. And this year I had Ashley Fernandez, my best mate, do live visuals for me, trigger them live. I do an EDM performance. I had Aisha Barreto, the biggest RJ in Goa, hosted with me. And I had Carlos, the drummer and percussionist from FC Goa and RCB Bangalore, perform. Wow. And we all do it live. And we have a great time because all the kids just sort of look forward to that because I never do these events.
Of course, yeah.
Right? So we did 6,500 people. I think this year we raised about 52 lakhs.
Wow, that's great.
That's a night.
It's awesome. Anish, another thing which I really admire about you and which I think the audience need to know is you're tremendously self-disciplined in terms of your gigging. Very, very professional.
Am I?
Yes, of course you are. Do you want to just touch base upon, how important it is? If there's anything else you want to just talk about, because this is something which I've really, I don't see you like ever hammered while playing. How do you
know me. You know I don't drink. I'm teetotal.
Yeah. Rarely like 1 or 2 beers.
Yeah, I think I could do 1 glass of beer a month.
Are you serious?
Which is a huge up for me, okay? And I don't like beer, mate. So the only thing I drink is stout. I love stouts, like Guinness. But yeah, 1 pint of Guinness a month.
So
That's me good. I'm a complete wuss. My mom's always like, have a glass of wine with me, have a glass of wine with me. I have found a new rosé I quite like, actually.
Okay.
So that's going down really well. And just to prove my point, there you go. Green tea. So I'm getting on the whole health thing, as you know. And everyone takes the piss, mate. Everyone takes the mick out of me because I don't drink. Not last year, one of the Supersonics ago, Jas, my stage manager.
Yeah.
Obviously, I have a drinks rider, which is just for my crew.
Yeah.
So everyone's taken care of. My crew's looked after. And they're like, what do you want to drink? And I was like, my throat's not feeling really good. I'd really pushed myself at too many late nights, too many gigs. He was like, would you want a cup of tea? And he laughed, and I went like, I'd love a cup of tea. So he got me a cup of tea on main stage.
Are you serious?
Yeah, it was great. In fact, I should ask for one this year.
You're probably the only guy who has tea on his rider.
Mate, I played Blue Frog, and Jihan sent us a vanilla milkshake on stage as a joke. And I was like, thanks, this is brilliant. So I can't speak for anybody else. It's a personal choice. Do whatever it is that you want to do. But as far as being inebriated when you're performing, that's a complete no-no for me. Because it's a job, right? At the end of the day, you're there to perform for people. People have spent money to come in and hear you. Okay. It is a job where you're facing people.
Of course.
So if you go to the bank to go and withdraw some money and the teller's pissed, how is that acceptable?
Yeah.
How is this different? I don't see a difference. You are getting paid for a performance. You have to be professional to a certain extent. So if you can't perform, what's the point? In my opinion.
Okay.
For whatever that's worth, it's just my opinion.
Great. Okay, so Anish, I've done a bit of research before I got into this podcast because I had to make sure that everything goes really well. So I have a very good source who told me that Anish has he has a lot of temper issues, and he's had a lot of temper issues, and the only way you can sort him out is by some nice prawn curry rice. Is that true?
Prawn curry rice will solve a lot of problems. Yes.
Till date?
Yeah, of course, man.
Okay.
Yeah, just throw fronds at me in any direction. Fronds, and then I'm a very happy boy, happy man. But yeah, I think I'm just a little particular, mate. And that's always been the case. So I can't get my head around people who will say, you know what, I'll do this, and then they don't do it. Why did you say you do it in the first place? Yeah. Right. So that just drives me nuts. I still cannot get my head around it. Whether it's work or personal or whatever it is. Say, for example, Rohan called me last week and he's like, mate, I've started this podcast. I want to come and interview you. When can we do it? So we fix a time and place. And if you don't turn up and I'm waiting, I'd be like, well, he said he'd be here. Why is he not here? And I'm sorry to say, it's a very Indian thing, right? Okay, this does not happen in other places, right?
Talking about Indian, so tell me, do you like Bollywood? Do you watch anything in Bollywood? Any favorite songs that you have?
Oh, man, why are you doing this to me, dude? Cannot stand it.
Can we just have like a couple of lines in Hindi?
No.
Kya chal raha aajkal, Anish?
Haven't a clue. No. I've watched 3 Bollywood movies my entire life.
Which movie?
3. I watched Amar Akbar Anthony. I watched Hrithik Roshan's first movie because there was a very cute girl who dragged me to it. Okay, and I watched Doom because I'm a big bike guy.
Doom.
Doom, whatever, one of them.
Doom 2 or Doom 3?
Doom 3. And there was just the one Doom because I couldn't handle it again.
Okay.
Do you know how I watch a Hindi movie? If that's the screen, I watch it like this. What did he say? What did he say? What did he say now? That's me. So I can get by with my Hindi. I can have a conversation with the cabbie just about. In the first 30 seconds, they'll sort of ask me, "You're not from here, are you?" And I'll be like, "Yeah, whatever." So I get that a lot. Aap bahar se hai? And I'm like, "Yes, okay, whatever." So,
All right, Anish, any tips, any suggestions you want to give? A lot of young listeners, a lot of guys who are just going to pick up this career right now,
Okay.
are going to be listening to this podcast.
Sure.
You've been in the game for the longest time right now.
Thanks for making me feel like an old fart. All right.
Anything that you want to just share? Anything that you think in particular is required for the future?
Yeah, of
Because-
course. Okay, so a couple of rules or a couple of guidelines that you need to set out for yourself always. Whatever they are, stick to them. Okay? So one of the go-to things that I tell everybody is pick a genre that you love and then work at it.
Okay.
All right. So if Bollywood floats your boat, do Bollywood. You're in the entertainment business. If you are not entertained, how can you entertain anybody else? Let me give you an example. I'm a half all right DJ in my opinion. Okay. I'm not total rubbish. I don't like Bollywood. I don't do it. Because if you want to see me play Bollywood, I would not be dancing and I'd have a look of death on my face. It just doesn't float my boat. I do not enjoy it in any way, shape, or form. Therefore, I don't do it. It's the same with country music. I can't stand country music. It's all the same. It's all about that girl that left you or the horse that died.
Yeah.
Or the girl that left you on the horse that died. Right? That's all it is. Right? So that's just me. So I don't do either of them.
Okay.
And that's something that I always say to a lot of DJs. Because I've seen people who would be performing and it drives me nuts when you see the DJ who's just there like a zombie. Mate, you feed off energy. You've seen me gig. I
Yeah.
can't sit still.
Of course, yeah.
And if I play a track that I have to play that I don't like, you'll know it
Yeah.
immediately because my
Yeah.
body language changes.
Of course.
So pick a genre, stick to it because it'll always be passion and that will drive you.
But what do you do in a case like a dubstep? If I was a dubstep artist, dubstep is gone. What do I do then?
Good question. Reinvent. Do you still want to keep doing it? Reevaluate where you are. The good thing with music is even though one thing may stop, it'll always evolve. A genre will never cease to exist.
Of course.
It will always morph or evolve into something else. Drum and bass morphed into dubstep.
Yeah.
Right? So all the guys who were doing drum and bass flipped over here. And then there was this thing called liquid drum and bass, which
course,
was
yeah.
unbelievable.
Yeah.
And then someone went, hey, why can't we do liquid dubstep? I can't stand dubstep. I think it's car horn music. I think it's awful. I don't think it's music. Right? I'm not knocking it. It's just my personal perception.
Yeah.
Some of my favorite artists who are dubstep artists, I think do amazing work. I could not write a dubstep record. I appreciate it for what it is. It does not float my boat. But liquid dubstep,
Yeah.
wow. Right?
Yeah.
You know, so like I said, pick something that works for you. That's one of the golden rules.
All right. So, Anish, something that we've been battling for a long time right now, and it's you and me. Apart from music, we have this nice rivalry going on.
Sure.
So, I just wanted to get your take on it. I mean, since you've been a very good mentor to us and a very good friend, how does it feel like being an Arsenal supporter while I'm a Liverpool fan?
It feels amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course it is, man. I mean, just look at the kind of success we've had. You guys have just suddenly stumbled on the block after the 70s.
Okay.
You haven't won the league in 30 years. Let's give you something.
All right. I think if you join Arsenal and Man United points, are we still more than you guys? What exactly is
Look,
the-
you're having one good
Oh,
season.
do you
one,
have- do you-
one good season?
Anish, we're
When
last
you-
year's Champions League winners, okay?
When you have an invincible season, we'll talk.
We are about a couple
When
of
you
games
finish
away.
the season, then we'll talk. By the way, what happened when Arsenal played Liverpool?
By the way, Aneesh
last?
Gera's missing his Arsenal badge from his bag. I can see it.
Excuse me.
He's
Look,
hidden it
look
up.
at it properly. It's there. It's the first badge right at
This
the top.
this is an audio podcast, guys. I can assure you he's removed the badge right now.
I will punch Rohan because he's wrong. The first badge up there is Arsenal, followed by
flip
my
side, I'm
Iron
gonna-
Man badge.
On the flip side, I'm going to gift you something. If you win the league,
If
you're
it's
getting-
anything Liverpool,
You're gonna-
I don't want it.
how about
To be fair, I'm actually quite liking Liverpool this year
good?
and last year. They've been mate. Klopp is such a good guy for you guys.
Yeah, of course.
Brilliant.
Can't wait to win this season.
Yeah, you guys deserve it by far. But I would back Leicester.
When we win it, I'm definitely going to give you a call.
I will be blocking your number soon.
All right, Anish, this has been awesome. It's amazing to have you on the podcast, and hopefully you'll be back soon. Thanks for sharing all your thoughts and your insights, and keep up the good work, man. Looking forward to seeing you more often in Pune. You've always said that Pune is one of your best cities to play at. We love you back, yeah. So please come back as soon as you can. And hopefully, let's do a B2B soon again.
Hey mate, I'd love that. Honestly, like I said. So thanks so much for having me. I'm really pleased with your podcast. Let's see how it turns out. And yeah, man, thanks a lot for having me, dude. I really appreciate it.
Sure. Thanks a lot. Cheers, bro.
Much fun, man. Cheers. Good
Cheers.
luck to you.
Thanks. Bye.
Cheers, bud.
And that was the episode, guys. Thanks for tuning into the BrkThru podcast. I'm getting mad love from all of you guys from the fraternity. Continue sharing, but definitely consider subscribing, following, liking, doing all that good stuff. This definitely helps me a lot.